Hey everybody, so in this video we're going to talk about bag straps because if you've been watching the channel for long enough, you know that I always make bags and I never make straps. And the reason is because when you're doing leather work, you can either do a thick leather strap that you know won't stretch, or you can do a sewn leather strap that you know is going to be 12 feet of stitching. Now I hand sew. If you have a sewing machine, this is a little bit different. But not really, because leather is still expensive, right? So you need a piece of leather that is 4 feet long. You can't make it out of a shoulder, right? So you have to have sides. Or you go for the max and you do padded shoulder strap, all the hardware. And the problem with that is, if you want to offer a nice bag for say $400 or $500, you have to add on either $100 for a strap here, $300 for a strap here, $500 for a strap here, because this strap took 16 hours to make. This strap just in sewing was 7 hours. And you can't run a sustainable business if you are losing money sewing straps. Also, they hurt your hands. So today, we are going to not use leather. We're going to combine leather with another material to give you an option, a strap option, that not only changes the look of your goods, but gives you the opportunity to offer. It's very rare that someone buys a bag and you can offer them add-ons, or you can offer them recurring purchases or ways to change up their bag that are simple, easy to make, and affordable, not only for you but for the customer. We're going to go over that today. So I have this bag, kind of Swedish military inspired, right? You have the double wet mold, beautiful. I think we made this in a video, but I never made a strap for it. And it was partially because I didn't have a customer for it, so it just kind of sat. But it was also because it didn't feel right to do such a casual bag with a full leather strap. This leather stretches out if you don't sew it, and not over a year. I'm talking like 3 years. The last thing you want is a customer that packs this thing full of stuff and it comes to you and it's hanging all the way down here, right? Yeah. All the way down here, because it'll stretch if you don't sew it, right? So the thing that I've been doing lately, because we have the hardware available to us now, is we're going to talk about nylon straps today. Being able to make a nylon strap is not only super quick, but nylon doesn't stretch. It's affordable. I believe it's $3.50 a yard. And it allows you to offer options for your bags. So if someone buys this bag and they get the navy strap, they can hit you up and say, "Hey, could I get an ivory strap?" Or they could say, "Hey, I'd like an olive green strap." Or, now this is a 1-inch strap. They make 2-inch straps, and obviously there's not a lot of stitching here. We're going to talk about when to stitch, when to rivet, etc., because nylon does have its limitations as far as when it'll fray. But I use nylon or polyester, because you can melt it. It's plastic, and so it's a very strong material. So in this video, we are going to use Buckle Guy's new swivel lever snaps, because I think they are the perfect look for this sort of military-inspired J. Crew looking bag. We are going to use some rivets. We are most importantly going to use leather washers. A lot of people don't rivet nylon because if you rivet it, the rivet tears right through the nylon. You have to use leather washers and it'll prevent that. We have one square, D square, I forgot what they call it. These are 1-inch solid antique brass, single loop solid brass. The link will be in the description. Again, thank you guys so much for we did a video where I said I was worried I was selling out, and you guys all thank me for just telling you where to get stuff. It's just part of the job. Buckle Guy sells these. This is what you want. I only had them in silver, and I could not make this whole project and have one silver piece on it, so I went to Joann Fabrics and got one. So we're going to be using a Joann Fabrics piece. I'm not proud of it, but it's decent quality and it looks nice. Other than that, we need a little Velodon, a little bit of leather, and a press or a hand press. That's it. These take about 20-30 minutes to make. You could batch them out, make probably 15 or 20 in a day. And I think the total cost on this to us, like with labor, is maybe 25 bucks. So it allows you to go from charging an extra $500 for a strap that takes 20 hours to make, to being able to offer $40, $50 straps in multiple colors so people can buy the base and again expand. And it is an easy way to either upsell or keep customers in contact with customers, just like some of the other projects we've been doing. Added value, interesting ways to make money that aren't necessarily leather, but leatherwork adjacent, all that good stuff. So I'm going to break down how these work. We're going to start with, I have 1-inch nylon webbing here, and then I have our 3/4 inch swivel leather snaps. These are the ones that Buckeye just came out with. And these should be regular brass, but all I had was antique brass. Ignore that, just the 1-inch squares. And then I have my one sad Joann Fabrics piece that I had to go get because I didn't have time to order from Buckeye to shoot this video, but that's okay. The first thing we're gonna do, the measurements on these are, it's kind of cool because they're adjustable, but it's not like a buckle. So you can go from this would fit like someone that's 7 feet tall if you make it this big, but if you bring it all the way up like this, oh geez, a child could wear it. So I'm going to give you one measurement, and that's the only measurement you're going to need on both pieces. And the front, I believe, is the part that doesn't have all this stuff, and the back is the part that has this stuff. That's it. So you're going to need 2 yards of nylon webbing, 6 feet per bag, in my opinion. The first measurement we're going to make is we're going to cut a piece that is 22 inches long. This is going to be our short piece. We can go right there. And these are, if you're off by an inch or so, no biggie at all. Now with nylon, you want to be careful. We're going to melt the edges. That'll seal those off. But you don't want to melt them too much that you make them like all wavy and stuff. It does just seal it off. If you're using cotton, this will not work. You're going to have to sew it. And if you're using a 2-inch wide piece of nylon, if you're making a duffel bag, you're going to want to sew this. You're not going to want to just rivet it. There's a reason that all mil-spec stuff is sewn with the X in the middle. This is for a lightweight bag. That's how we're starting. We'll get into the thicker stuff later, not in this video, but we'll make a thick strap out of nylon. But for this video, we're starting off small hip bag. We're going to go all rivets, velvet on. It'll be nice and strong. First thing we're going to do is cut out a dozen washers. Now, you can use something like this. This is the KS Blade Punch washer punch. I love it. You punch it, you pull the seal, and normally either your washer falls out right there, or it's waiting for you right there. If you are using, we're using 9.2 millimeter cap posts, 9.2 millimeter caps, 12.7 millimeter posts. That seems like a long post, and it is because we're going to be going through a lot of material in some of these joints. So make sure you get a long enough post. If you do not have a specialized tool like that, grab yourself a 1/2-inch punch, start punching away. Right? These are not even the right color, but once you hit the leather that you're using, then take a tool, be very careful of the sharp part of the punch. You don't want to ding it or anything like that. Get all your washers out that you just made, and then you're just going to do your best to punch some holes directly in the middle. You can do that with a hole punch or with a rotary punch. I tend to find it easier. I do it with a rotary punch more, but I find with accuracy it's easier to do it with a hole punch. So I'm taking the rivets that we're using, and I'm finding the punch that it fits as snug as possible. I don't have a wide range of these, we only have 3. So that's about as snug as it's going to get. And all we're going to do is center this as good as possible. Now remember, once we set this in a rivet press, the pressure is going to make it kind of go all over the place anyway. So you want them to be centered, but don't worry about it being perfect. That'll do just fine. So for your 2 yards of nylon, we're going to make two pieces. We're going to make our base piece, which is this little 10-inch piece here. Then the rest of it is going to be our adjustable piece. Both ends are identical. They're not in this one because it was a sample. I was trying to decide how I wanted to make it, but we're going with this one. You don't have to install this rivet. I like to because it keeps everything nice and sturdy. If you don't, this ring, or D square, will just go around everywhere. By installing this rivet, it just kind of holds it in place. It's not doing anything strength-wise, it just holds it in place and keeps it looking nice and tidy. So, the first piece we're going to make is this piece. So we want our seams to be neat, and we are doing a bit of sewing that is not leather work. So we have to do a little bit of tucking and gluing and folding. I'm going to mark a mark at 2 inches because this needs to be 10 inches total. Then I'm just going to make a little tiny mark right there. We're going to fold this over, then we're going to fold this whole thing up to here. Then we're going to put our leather piece over it, and that'll make sure that we have no raw seams in our nylon. So all I'm going to use is barge cement. Now, I'm sure if you're like me, you're going to go to Joann Fabrics and give this a go. Nothing wrong with that. That's what local stores are for. If you can visit them and give them your business, absolutely do it. But you're going to be tempted to use a wall full of fabric glues. And I would stress, I even bought one to show you what they look like, because they look like they're ready to go. Use your barge cement, use your leather cement. It's going to be the strongest you're going to get. This Gorilla Glue fabric glue might be great for making baby blankets and stuff like that. We're basically still dealing with leather here. This is nylon. We want it to stick as best we can, and we're going to be hammering this down. We want it to stay really, really flat. So I'm going to let this glue dry. On the other side, we are going to go and get into our 1-inch single loops. We're going to grab one of these. I'm going to hang my head in shame as it's the only antique brass piece on this entire bag, but what are you going to do? That's all we had. This is going to ultimately end up like this. What we need to do is we need to mark about 1 inch on this side once we put our loop on, and you want to make sure that this is going to lay flat, right? And we're going to glue that as well because we're making one fixed piece here. So we're going to throw some glue right there, and we're going to let that dry up. So for this part, all I'm going to do first is just tuck this over to get ourselves a nice clean seam, just in case anyone ever sees any of that, which they shouldn't. And the big thing here is I want to move this mic so that it's not too loud, and move a couple things here. You're going to want to take, this is more leather work than sewing. I'm not a sewer, sewist, whatever. We're going to take this and we're going to hammer the daylights out of it to flatten it. Like that. Then we're going to take our square ring, we're going to put it on, and the side that we glued, we're going to attach right here, like this. And we want to make sure that we're all lined up as best we can. Now remember, this is leather, it's not webbing, so it's going to move around. And we're going to hammer this in like this. So this is the first step of solidifying this joint. Now we want to pull this tight, pinch right there, and we're going to punch a hole. Some people do this with a hot screwdriver because you're automatically sealing off the webbing melts. I don't find that necessary, but if you do, go for it. I'm going to pull this tight, but I want to give it a little bit of space, and I'm going to use my 7/16 inch punch. The nice thing about webbing is you can just kind of eyeball it a lot of the time. We want to make sure we have enough room here though, but I do like having a tight fit right here. And we're going to punch a hole. right through the webbing. Now, this is the first time we're going to use rivets. We're going to take a rivet, which you can see very long. The reason that's very long is because it's going to have 2 washers on it. So I'm going to put 1 washer on. I'm going to put this through both holes that we just poked. Then I'm going to put another washer on. Then I'm going to put this cap on. Now we're going to go over and we're going to set this rivet. And you can see there's a lot of play, right? So we can move this around, and I'm going to show you how I try to get my rivets as centered as possible on the rivet press. Now you can do this in the die holder as well that Buckle Guy sells. You don't need to do this on a machine. They're 25 bucks. They're super easy to use. Let's go over to the rivet press and I'll show you how I'm going to make this look as pretty as I possibly can. So here at the press, we have our rivet, we have our 2 leather washers, which are very important because they're going to prevent the rivets from ripping through the nylon. We don't need to glue any of this, but what I am going to do, if you don't have the Buckle Guy press, they also make a base that this just plugs into. It's like 25 bucks and a handle, and as you're ready to upgrade, you can upgrade. I'm not going to fully set this rivet first. I'm going to set it about halfway. I'm going to go down a little bit more, and then I'm going to move my leather where I want it so that it's centered on my rivet as best I can on both sides. So you can see that's how that's kind of off. Now it is kind of tight, so it's going to look a little funny, but when we smush this down, by doing this, we're going to get it to look as centered as possible, at least for me. I'm half ogre. Might not look centered at all. But now we have a set rivet, and that looks pretty presentable. I have prepared 2 leather straps that matches our bag. Now this bag I made over a year ago, so it's CLPA, either Amazonia. I believe it's Amazonia, but it might be Missouri. These are Missouri. You're really not going to be able to tell the difference. We are going to be using 2 of the swivel lever snaps. I wanted to give you a little bit of history about the lever snap. So this is the lever snap that everybody knows. It's 1 inch. It makes a great keychain, but it's really big. So what Buckle Guy did was what I've been waiting for anyone to do for like the last 5 years, is they not only made a smaller version, so you can make little keychains. This is a 1/2 inch opening, but it still has a full-size hole. They also made a swivel version, which makes a mat bag, that's what this would be called, from the Swedish military in, I don't know what wars they've been in, but from the 30s and 40s. This allows you to add a little bit of that flavor with the function of a nice just swivel snap. That's it. So we're going to be using 2 of the 3/4 inch solid brass swivel lever snaps. And then we also have some videos coming out making some cool stuff with this. So what I've done, this is the piece we're working on now, is I have applied Velodon, which this is a very, very, very thin pulp-based nylon backing, which is going to make sure that no stretching happens on our leather. Because if we were to, obviously the nylon is not going to stretch, but if we were to put a leather piece at the end where all the pressure goes, and we had just this little piece holding off of this, this would stretch out. This is going to prevent that. I've also measured, and this is going to be different for everybody, I've measured where I want my holes to be. Now this is going to be at the bottom here. So I want to make sure that I'm getting 2 good holes in both pieces of this nylon. And the reason that I'm not poking hot holes or I'm not sewing, and remember, if you want to sew this first, by all means do it. I've found that this is plenty for a lightweight bag. Heavier weight bags, definitely sew. A lightweight bag like this, if you do this and do the right lining, do the rivets, make sure you're doing your washers, make sure everything lines up, you shouldn't have a problem with just riveting this together. I'm going to punch my 2 holes here. Right, this is where I want the rivets on one side of my keychain. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this in half. Now, people that watch my videos know that usually I would say fold this in half as you're sticking it. Because this is so chunky, it doesn't really matter. So we're not going to be doing that on this one. The third thing I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this on. I'm going to get these matched up as perfectly as I can. And the nice thing is these have flat ends. So this flat end will butt right up against this, and we're not going to have a problem with any rotational issues. Now, I'm going to use a clip, just a standard alligator clip. And I'm going to use these clips to denote where I want to glue to. So first I want to make sure that my straps are even on either side. Then I'm going to use these alligator clips to hold this nylon down, not the leather, just the nylon, and make sure they're even. Like that. And all that's going to do is tell me where I'm gluing on this nylon. With this piece, we're going to break out the barge. Everything's barge on this one. Get rid of some of that stuff. Now obviously this is a 1-inch strap that we want a 3/4 inch strap to be attached to. So we're just going to glue a strip down the middle up to where our clips are. Pick up some of that. And if you get a little off the side, you're not going to be able to notice it, especially on this color, but nylon's pretty forgiving. Now once we have that glue on, I'm just going to use those alligator clips as a stand, and that'll hold it up for me. On our leather piece, you'll notice that I've only punched one side, and that's because once I have that side glued on, I'm going to make sure everything's centered and then punch through everything so that all the holes line up. I'm going to glue both sides thoroughly, and I'm going to set that on its side to dry as well. Once that's dry, we can put it all together, rivet it, and this piece will be done. This entire cutting board is 2 feet long. I'm going to take 4 feet and a little tiny bit extra, 3-4 inches extra, and I'm going to cut this. And our first thing that we have to do is take our shamefully purchased Joann Fabrics slide adjuster, which honestly doesn't look that bad, but the ones Buckle Guy sells look a lot better. We need one end. This is the solid part on this one is we're going to go through this center bar and make an attachment here. And I am going to do a little sewing here because I feel like it's easy to sew through this nylon. You don't have to poke holes or anything, and you can just use leather needles. But I am going to show you how I do it so it doesn't get away. I also want to rivet it. So remember, anytime you cut this, you want to grab your lighter and melt it. There's mine. And I think I might have to go take a break to feed my cats. So that's melted down. Don't touch it because don't touch it immediately because it'll burn you. But you do want to that's good to go. So we're going to start on our long strap. And I'm going to be honest with you. They sell 3 or 4 different types of these. I'm pretty sure this is plated zinc, but it's not bad. If you have to make it through, it's not going to break on you. I'm going to take 3 inches. I'm going to mark off a little mark at the 3-inch mark and a little mark at the 2-inch mark. Like that. So we have some selective gluing to do because what our goal is going to be to tuck this over to hide this seam. Then we're going to slide this through and have it settle right about in the middle. Actually, we need this in the middle. So that's 1.5. I want to mark there, and I want to mark it 1. You want to mark it 3, 2, 2.5, and 1. Now, from here to here, we're going to glue. From here outward, we're going to glue. In here, we're not going to glue. Okay? And we're doing this because you can, I think I said I was going to sew this. I've decided that we're just going to make this a fully no-sew piece, just so we can show we can do it. Nylon is strong enough if you do it correctly. Now, if you want to sew it, again, I don't want a whole bunch of comments saying you're supposed to sew it. I understand most people sew nylon. I grew up on sailboats and whalers, and I know that. But for a very lightweight bag situation, this glue and rivet setup is going to be absolutely fine. Now that both sides of our glue are dry, I'm going to focus first on one side of my leather attachment. And I'm going to kind of look down the side to make sure that I'm lined up as well as I can be. And what you're going to have to do is you're just going to have to eyeball it a little bit and make sure that the distance from the edge to the leather, because it's only 1/8 of an inch, right? Quarter, yeah, it's 1/8 of an inch. It's just even on both sides, right? So this, I'm not pressing down hard. And the good thing with nylon is, if you barge cement it, it's not like leather where the minute you stick it down, you're just stuck. You can kind of pick it up and play with it a little bit, but once you hammer it down, you can't. And I'm going to do that on the same thing on this side. I'm just going to lift it up. I'm going to make sure it's exactly where I want it. I'm going to press it down. And then I'm going to look at it sideways, and I'm going to make sure that my two leather pieces are roughly in the same spot. Once we have that all down, we have our nice flat piece lined up with our nice flat piece. Our seam is hidden. No one's ever going to notice that because it'll face the inside of the bag. Now we're ready to punch the 2 holes for our rivets. And you could actually go 3 holes if you wanted to here. You can do whatever you want. So I'm going to punch my hole, and actually, here's a trick. If I wanted to put this hole down a little bit, since we're using our spacers, what I can do is, because I think I want this hole a little bit lower, I'm going to hide that with the spacer, see how far down I can go, and then I'm going to make a mark right there. And I can get a little bit more room just to make it look a little more balanced. Now we're punching through the whole thing. So I'm going to punch a hole through here, and this is where you cross your fingers and hope to your lucky stars that you got everything lined up. If it's not perfectly centered, you can go in and kind of just mess around with it a little bit. I am using a hole punch that is smaller than the rivet that I have, so that I have room to go around and make these adjustments. So that when we get to the rivet press and we actually put this thing together, everything looks perfect. So you can see that's far off. But all I have to do is go in there and do a few more punches, right? And now the benefit of using the washers is it's going to be easy for me to center it. It's almost like one of those sliding holes when you attach like a hinge on a door or whatever like that. That's how I do these. Could you have measured and punched them all out? Yes, but with the nylon I find it easier to just do it on the piece. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go over and we're going to rivet these the same way that we riveted the other ones. We have our super long washers. We're going to start with one of those. We're going to put that all the way through, and now you can see why we're using these real long washers, because remember, we're not just putting our cap on there, we're putting another washer on there. Then we're going to add our double cap. And this is what's going to make this viable as a stitchless design, because there's no way in HE double hockey sticks that you're going to have that metal getting through both of those layers of leather to rip that nylon on a bag this light. So I'm going to just kind of move it around, get it where I want it, and then I'm going to do the same thing on my second rivet here. And remember, since we brought our nylon all the way up from the side, it's a nice even piece of nylon that doesn't look like it's folded or anything like that. And that fold doesn't really matter all too much because both layers are being riveted together. So we have our small piece done. This never adjusts. This is the base. This is your anchor. It should be about, from here, it should be 10 to 11 inches long. That's what you're shooting for, all right? Now, it's also the back that should be worn on the back. I mean, you wear it however you want, but this is meant to be worn like on your back. It's more comfortable to have the thing with no hardware on the front. So remember, we have 1 inch to glue here, and we have 1 inch and a little bit to glue here, because what we're going to do is we're going to fold this over and we're going to hammer this down. Now, the way that these go together is a little confusing. Once you get it, it's super easy. We're using our center bar right now. So we're going to put one side through one end, and we're going to put the other side through the other end. Then we're going to line up a little bit past our Sharpie mark, and we're going to glue that down. Now this is the spot that I said, if you want to stitch this, stitch it. Or if you want to put a leather patch or whatever you want to do. I am going to use a larger rivet than we've been using, so I have bigger surface area, but I am not going to do anything but rivet this. Simply because I don't think it needs it. I've made these straps before, they act fine. We have some 11mm caps, which is this is a 9.2 with a 12.7mm post. That may be a little bit long, but it'll work. And all we're going to do, same thing, we're going to put that through there. We're going to put our other washer on the other side, and we're going to put our cap on here, and this leather will prevent the washer over time from digging into the nylon and tearing it. And I'm going to go set this rivet, and then we'll get into final assembly. And you can see our rivet here matches our rivet here. Now, if you're going to sew this, I would suggest sewing a line down here. I would fold this a little further down so that you could catch the seam and just sew it, but as it stands it'll be fine. Final assembly is a little weird on these. It's kind of the opposite of how you would think. We're using swivel snaps, so it doesn't really matter what way you go. You just want to make sure that everything lays flat. And obviously I haven't ironed this, but we're going to go through our square ring. Then we're going to go through one end of our double loop and through the other end of our double loop. And this is where the adjustability is going to come from. So you can see as I move up and down. Now here's a good example of how, you see I'm twisted here, so I need to take this out. Always check your work on these because you don't want to have to drill out rivets. So I need to flip this over. Now when I install this piece here and this piece here, and we pull, we're going to have a nice flat strap. So to finish up our strap, we're going to do the same thing we did on this side. We're going to get a nice flat trim. We're going to use our ruler, or our lighter, not a ruler, to melt that down. So another way, I'm going to show you multiple ways to do this end piece, right? What you can do is you can cut a slit like this, about 1 inch long, 1.5 inches long, enough to get one of your rivets through. And I'm just kind of freehanding it. We're going to melt. There was glue on that. We're going to melt. Oh my God. Jesus. It's melted enough. And now this way is, I prefer this way over that way because you're just tucking everything together. But that is how flammable barge cement is. So we're going to fully glue this triangle, but then we're going to try to glue sort of a matching triangle on this side. This is going to be supported by a rivet, so you do not have to worry about getting exact placement. But this is another way that you can do this. There are many ways to do this ending here. I'm going to place this here, and I'm just going to do a little observing. I'm going to look and see, when I lift this up, does that hole put a rivet through this piece of nylon? And it does, but it's a little bit close. So just like the last time when we glued these on, when I go to punch this hole, I'm going to punch it a little bit higher and make sure my rivet is up a little bit. And that's the beauty of the washers. So now we can just kind of glue everything. We're going to do it the same way. I'm going to glue, the all the leather like we would any other leather project, leaving a space in the middle for our swivel snap. And then I forgot to do our clip here, but we can do it on the run. And I'm just gonna err on the side of caution and say we'll just glue down to there on our other side. So for our final step, we are going to butt that guy up against our piece of hardware, and we're going to glue down our first half, and then we're going to turn to the side here and make sure our second half is about even. And then we're going to turn to each side and make sure that there is approximately a 1/4 inch of webbing on either side of our leather. Now remember when I told you we needed to take a peek to see how much of our rivet we're catching on that second layer. We're not catching enough for me to feel comfortable about it. So what I'm going to do is, and again, this is a benefit of using the washers. I'm using them so they don't rip through the nylon, but it does give you a little allowance here. I'm going to punch up here like that, and that gets us through the meat and potatoes of that piece of nylon. And then I'll punch down here. Now we're going to turn it over, see how centered we are. We're not particularly centered, but we can just go right here and get that nice and centered. Go in here, get that nice and centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the bottom washer first, because that's pretty much just where it's going to go. Or bottom rivet first. That's just where it's going to go. I'm always careful when I have washers. I don't just slam them. I go slow. I check to make sure they're centered. And when I know they're centered, then I give them the final push. With this one, I'm going to push this up as much as I can, the metal part. I'm going to kind of force myself to force it up there. Then I'm going to go halfway, and you'll feel a click if you're using this, if you're using a press, right? So it may not be as centered as I want it to on the washer itself, but the most important part, and actually that is centered, is that it's grabbing those two, it's grabbing both layers of that. And it is, we'll be fine. So now that's fully set, and our strap is fully done. So let's go install it in the bag and see how we did. So when your job is to make a thing that lasts for life, expecting repeat customers is gifts or kids or stuff like that. How do you make repeat customers out of people who are buying things for themselves? And how do you offer customization at a level that you can handle as 1 or 2 people? This is a great way to do that. It's also a great way to change the look of a bag. So we have a nice navy strap on here now, very coastal, very New England, very Nantucket. All we have to do is take these snaps off, which they're really not paying me to say this. These snaps are awesome, especially for bags like this. We take our fresh new strap that we just made. Yes, it needs to be ironed. And we clip this one on. And we have a totally different look. Very like Nicole Kidman's Safari. I don't know where that came from, but I'm just going to stick with it. And because these are swivel, as long as you install everything straight, if you install this and go, oh no, it's got a twist in it, it's a swivel. That's it. The way that you adjust the length, all you do is pull. That makes it huge. And if something like this happens, where you're like, well, that one I really didn't mean to do, you just flip it like this, and then you're straight. Everything is adjustable. You can go down to your kid wants to wear your bag, like that. Your grandpa wants to wear your bag and he's 6'8", like that. And you have options. It allows your customer to have one bag and go into their closet and say, is it a navy blue day? Is it a tan day? Is it an olive day? Is it maybe a leather day? You make leather straps too. It allows for all sorts of different combinations, and it allows you to have a product that people will repeatedly buy, because everyone doesn't need to keep buying wallets over and over again. Now, I know it's not all leather. Sometimes that's okay, though. That's why cloth is in our name. But like I said, when you add a third element to a design, it does elevate. Even though this isn't leather, it looks more professional, to me at least, than a full leather bag does. It looks like it was designed by a fashion house. You bought it in a store. And I'm not saying that's the goal, because obviously I have a lot of bags with full leather handles. But it also kind of makes this a bag that feels a little more comfortable going down to the grocery store. It feels a little more comfortable going for a walk in the park. Maybe some people don't want to carry a leather strap all the time. It's more comfortable in the summer. So that's, it was going to be quick. It's not quick. That is a full video on how to make yourself a fully adjustable nylon strap for any bag. You don't have to stitch anything. You don't have to spend hours trying to hold inch leather, and you can get webbing up to 3-4 inches. I mean, they hold like containers onto ships with this stuff. So if you're doing a duffel, I would recommend fully stitching your joints in at least 2 inches. Remember, this is a very, very lightweight application. This is a tiny bag. You could probably fit a pound or two into it. But these rivets will hold. The nylon's perfectly strong. And that's going to be it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.